All right. Thanks for coming, y'all. I'm excited about this book. I know Stacy was trying to get the author to do a team call, and she said, if you can get 150 people there, I'll do it. Stacy was like, no, it's probably not going to happen. But I will say she did a team call that I was on with a lot of people, and I'm happy to come back and post it in our team page. I don't know if you prefer to watch it at the end or now, but I'll see if I can snag it from one of the other coaches and at least let you guys have access to it. She's like a really bubbly, exciting personality, and I feel like she's very engaging. And I'm sure what you could tell from starting the book is like she literally starts every chapter with a story and then weaves in some other story to go into it to make her point. I think that obviously is like, the point of it. And I think for you guys' sake, like it's funny to me that this is now what people talk about, but really like look at what's happened with social media over the past 2 years. Instagram stories, Facebook stories is where it's at. And it's because you can really like give a story line within the stories so much easier than if you just craft a post. And of course there's, a way you could do it with a post, but I think it takes a lot more work and it takes a lot more like just being very proficient in your words and kind of like giving the right amount of detail for things. So it's easy to miss like an effective, post because of that. So I think if you take some things away from this, like start practicing it in your stories and it makes it a lot easier. The other thing I was going to say is I listened to the National Wake Up Call today and Carl like broke down how to like invite via stories. And I just thought that was pretty interesting. He's like, gone are the days of you being a salesperson, right? Like you of course can sit online and explain benefits of all your products and you might sign somebody up. But if you're not running a challenge group, like talking about like how your life has been impacted or talking about how other people's lives are impacted with this, the chances of you helping as many people goes way, way down. And you'll see lately, if you follow other coaches, that there's a lot more emphasis on recognizing other people with wins within your groups, telling their story, like here are the coaches that make up our team, here's their profession, their family life, their like what their need was for this and how their lives have changed. Like I see it all the time. I don't follow a ton of coaches, but when I do, I am automatically like more drawn into those that are sharing those types of success stories and highlighting people like for what their actual life looks like, not for like so and so did insanity and they lost 20 pounds. Check them out. Like that just doesn't ever have as much effectiveness. So I think it's kind of interesting because I just feel like it keeps popping up everywhere. And I even am on some like lister for Coach Jimmy, which I don't know if you'll know him. He's like a really old Beachbody coach. And today his email said, and I thought I would share this, but it says, "Hey Sarah, you've heard me say over and over, tell stories. It could be used for a podcast, a 15-minute prospecting call, a 3-minute video, a networking event, an interview, a Facebook Live with your audience, a work meeting, a coffee date. You can even use it with your own kids to persuade your significant other that yes, you really do need that new pair of jeans. You can use it on a sales call. You can use it to tell a great story amongst friends. And you can even use it to write a blog post or put it on a YouTube channel. But knowing exactly what to say and how to lay it out can be challenging." And then he actually like gives some friends of his, I guess, to have like a storytelling uh, like training, of course, something that you can listen to or pay for. But it basically just talks about the power of telling stories and using it to connect with people on a deeper level. And then I'm sitting here tonight and Colin's like, "Sarah, can I practice my closing argument for you for a hearing he has tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he starts off with this quote and he starts telling this guy's life story. This guy went AWOL 5 times. He lost a baby early and he chose to spend that time with his family. He then had a second baby born extremely prematurely, chose to spend that extra time with his family. And then his like most recent child that was born, the like wife apparently had a ton of morning sickness and health issues and chose to spend that time with his family. And he like weaves out this like storyline of saying, yes, he acknowledges what he did is not right. Like he clearly did not show up for his job. He clearly was, not fulfilling his duties to the Army. But what he was doing was choosing to take back that time that he lost whenever he lost that first child. And I'm getting like chills listening. And all I've heard about this guy for like months is how obnoxious he's been, how terrible he's been. And then Colin tells me that closing argument, and I'm like, is this the same person? Like, I'm now feeling sorry for this guy and like wanting to be on his side. And that just shows like you can use these like tools everywhere. And I'm like, no wonder to me, as I started reading this book, I'm like, Colin is like one of the most likable people you'll ever meet but he's a storyteller, and that's how he, like, his friendships work. Like, Colin is the entertainer of the friendships. He's constantly telling stories. And now that I'm starting to read it, I'm like, he doesn't even know that it's like he's like selling himself, but that's in essence what he's doing, and that's how he makes connections with people. So it's kind of funny, like maybe when you start digging into stuff like this, you see the themes everywhere, but I feel like it just keeps being hammered home, and it kind of makes me like second guess some of the things that I've done. You know, like I had a interview 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago for a manager position at work, and I did the PowerPoint slide thing, just giving points. And then after reading the first chapter of this, I was like, I probably could have like sold myself better if I would have talked a little bit more about my life and like my experiences and how, you know, it applies. So anyways, did anybody else have like a big takeaway like that? No.
I mean, I think about like, I think the point of the closing argument, obviously, like I think about that stuff. And I mean, I had a hearing last week, and it was like it was my first hearing like by myself at my new job, and it was a motion to dismiss like several causes of actions. It was a big deal. And I, you know, approached it how I have always approached things being in a courtroom, and it was to tell a story about how this was bullshit essentially. But, you know, that's what it made me think of, was like, oh, you know, that's what I'm used to doing. You don't even realize.
Well, and it's like easy to watch the television dramas and see it, but you don't necessarily always think about how to like apply it in your own day-to-day job. And in reality, like any meeting we give, any time we teach our kids something, even like kind of making it more meaningful is the only way that it sticks, you know? Like she was talking about how her friend, she told a story, I guess, about a friend who lost a child by falling into the pool, and talking about like how they didn't have like a gate up or something. And she's like, now literally that story comes up every summer with every person I know that owns a pool. Like, and they make sure to kind of like share that story to use that as the, like, cause if you just said, make sure you put a gate up, people are like, okay, I'll think about it, you know? But then when she ties it back to like, this is what actually happened, the value of it goes like way up for these people.
So I thought the JFK story was super interesting. I was listening to it, reading it at work, doing like processing orders, and I like had to stop my work because I was like so entranced by her story. I rewound it a few times and re-listened. I was like, is that what I'm hearing? And then she tells the part about, you know, like the next day they went and it was like a totally different experience because that girl was like, oh yeah, it's a bottle of cologne, like. And I was just thinking, like, how many times have I done that at work? And, like, that makes a huge difference is I have a split second to get a franchise to sign on and get in front of them, you know, when they have so many different things. I mean, the restaurant business is, like, so cutthroat. You know, so it was very interesting. And I think, like you're saying, like, it applies to so many other things in your life. Like, instead of just taking it for the base facts, like how can you spin it like Colin's argument, you know, to make it a story. And I don't know, that was like very, I know that was like the opening thing, but like it really hit me hard in that aspect of like, oh wow, that really does make a difference. And I like half paid attention when she was telling the second part because I really didn't, it wasn't intriguing to me.
You're like, just tell me what happened with that cologne.
Yeah, I'm like, but really that's all I care about.
I know, because like I mean it was interesting that like if they would have come in the next day and talked to that next salesperson, it would have not mattered to them at all. And
right.
Now like years later, this is her like probably what she uses to start like presentations to groups of like, you know,
right.
corporate execs and stuff like that because it had that much of an impact on her and her husband.
Yeah. It was interesting. I mean, I know that was like so cliche to pick the first story, but I was like, no, that really is like extremely applicable to so many situations.
For sure.
Oh, I mean, this is like the third time I've read this that part, and I got all wrapped up in it again. Like, I just was like, I knew what was going to happen, but it was still just like, it was like you said, it was just so interesting. You kind of stop and you're like, oh, like I was cooking dinner and I just like completely stopped and just kept.
Right? Like you just gotta stop and like rewind and like, what is happening?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And I thought that the way she tells the story is really effective to say like,
yes,
all these things about my husband that would make him never be like, even look in that direction, but for some reason, like this sold him, and that just to me
Right.
was like the way she kind of spun it. Like we walk by this bread shop, doesn't want to smell any bread,
Right.
walk by the whatever, like, and it's just that part of it. I was like, she's telling the story in a really good way too, like just giving
Yeah,
you all
she's
the
like
feels.
effectively in
Yeah.
a story.
Does she read the book on Audible herself?
Yes.
See, I think that always makes you kind of get to know him better too, and it probably lets you kind of have more takeaways of like, she's a really good storyteller,
Yeah, and it's yeah, she's got a good voice, so we're good.
We get along.
Yeah. And she liked my post on Instagram, so.
Well, her Instagram posts all tell really good stories too. Like they're extremely captivating, like well written. And I was kind of scrolling back through just to like, try to get to know her a little bit better. And I was just like, man, like the way she writes just draws you in,
Yeah.
I know I kind of like highlighted certain sections, and she was telling like about this JFK story, and she compared it to like when you're intrigued by something and you're driving and you miss the exit because it like has drawn you in so much. And I was like, oh yeah, that's happened to me several times. Like if I'm listening to a good book or something,
You purposely take the long way home?
I finished listening to that book, City of Girls, today. Molly, have you read that? Elizabeth Gilbert?
No, it's on my list. Is it good? Is it worth listening to?
I think so. I mean, it's entertaining. But I had like an hour and a half left, and I was like, I've got too much to do to listen to this, but I just couldn't stop listening because I was so far down the rabbit hole, Okay, the other part of the cologne story that drew me into is when she was saying that the salesperson talked about how it was hidden in books and that like the Nazis would like smuggle it past like certain places to deliver it. I'm sorry, it was snuck past the Nazis, not Nazis snuck it past. And then somehow like made its way to the United States during this time when like he really shouldn't have had access to it, I guess.
Yeah, it was really interesting. As a history major, I was like, what is going on? This is so cool.
I know. Okay. That was like most of my takeaways from the introduction. Does anybody have anything else on that? If not, I'll play the video. Okay, let me share my screen.
Oh, yeah.
Only fools rush in. I can't help falling in love with you. Oh, shall I stay? Would it be a sin? Oh, if I can help falling in love with you. Oh, like a river flows surely to the sea, darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be. Won't take my hand, take my whole life too. For I can't help falling falling in
Give extra,
love
get extra.
with
Oh my God, no Ryan, please. Pal's obsessed with that kid. But did you not get chills whenever you watched that?
Mm-hmm.
I watched it
Yes.
right before, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry.
I knew exactly what she was talking about when she brought it up because I remember that commercial. I was like, this is so weird for a gum ad, but this is really cool.
Yeah. It's been so long since I've seen it, though.
Oh,
Hey, Amanda.
hey, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
We were at a birthday
afraid you were
party
asleep.
and Brady had a just had a horrible meltdown.
Oh, no.
Past his bedtime, too many marshmallows, apparently.
You need some melatonin.
Well, when he came, he's asleep. I just threw him in there. But when we came home, the balloon came off the string, and Michael came up behind him, and so he blamed it on Michael. And he was like, "Don't touch me! You made my balloon go." Okay. Anyway, so
I get it. We had a sucker incident earlier.
oh my god.
Pal dropped down on the car floor, and I was like, dude, you can't eat that. The car floor is so gross from you. You did it. It's your fault.
And he flipped out.
Yeah, he cried the whole way to pick Charlotte up.
Oh my god. I was like, oh my gosh, I have book club night. I said, Michael, Daddy's putting you to bed. And so, y'all, he went to bed and I had to let him sip milk. And he goes, my teeth are going to fall out because I sip milk. Because I told him, if you don't brush it. And I said, Michael, go in there and take him some water. And I left. So, did y'all have all y'all done is watched the commercial?
We talked about the intro, and then we were just moving into chapter 1.
Okay.
Chapter 1, I guess, is where she starts to get a little more technical, but it's obviously all about bridging gaps. And what she says is you must master 3 main elements to have any hope of building a bridge strong enough to get your intended audience, potential customers, key team members, investors, etc., across the Great Divide. And they are attention, influence, and transformation. So you must capture the attention and captivate the audience so that they know there's a bridge in the first place. The second element is influence. That's how you compel the audience to take the action you desire. And third, if you don't want to have to keep bridging the same gaps over and over, the best bridges transform the audience, create a lasting impact, and leave the audience changed. They never even consider returning to the other side of the bridge, thereby closing the gap forever.
I liked that she started again, like with a story about, her high school crush, and I'd forgotten about it. And then, I guess I can't remember where she weaves it back in, but I think when she's talking about the commercial, and then I was like, oh, I forgot she was talking. This started all about this boy that she loved in high school.
Well, it could have been a story about Welch's grape juice, right? Or grape soda.
Oh, yeah.
Well, because I think her point is like that, like sharing aspect, they're like bringing relationships together or starting relationships. And of course, for her, that's like what made her think that this boy liked her. And then that same storyline shows up in the gum ad because that's how their relationship starts. I don't remember extra gum being that popular, but the more I watch that commercial, the more I'm like, oh, I'll probably buy extra next time. I didn't necessarily highlight as much stuff from this chapter because it gets more technical, which is why I think this book will be a little bit harder to do as a book club. But I feel like the example she uses kind of get the point home. So how she talks about you have to captivate the audience first, then influence them, and then transform the audience. And I feel like the emotional elements of that commercial do that, like, I don't know, she drops her books and he picks them up, and then as a thank you, she offers the gum, but the gum is what sparks the love, and like he continues to draw on the wrappers, you know?
I just liked that she, kind of kept coming back to, but, once an audience emerges from the story, they're changed. The effects are long lasting. A story's transformative power can also extend beyond the recipient. Sometimes the story can transform the message itself. And that made me think of how many stories you hear and it resonates with you, but then sometimes if you tell it to somebody else, maybe you tell it a little bit differently because you see it through your eyes. So that's what that made me think about.
Or you start to confuse, like, was that my story, or is that what I saw? Because you, like,
That's a good point.
How she says you fill in the gaps, you know? And it's funny because I feel like, talking about Colin earlier, I was saying he's like one of the best storytellers I know, but I've noticed now, being with him as long as I have, that his stories start to change a little bit over time. And I'm like, I don't think that's what really happened. But you can't call him out on it because it already had like an impact on the person.
Oh.
David will randomly tell me a story and I'm like, no, I told you that. He's like,
We do
"What?"
that too.
That's my story.
Like, I told you that story yesterday.
I'm glad that it had an impact on you and that you thought it was yours.
I remember this one time in law school, somebody told me a story about this dog that was trained to bring beer to its owner. Like, literally could go to the refrigerator somehow, open it up, grab a beer with its mouth, and bring it back to the owner. And I remember telling that story to someone else, and that person being like, that's my brother. Like, whoever told you that was a lot like talking to you about my brother. It's like, power of a story, you know? Like,
6 degrees of separation.
I mean, that's the way the world works anyways, but that's how you remember people, right? Like,
Yeah.
if I met you, I would need to know, like, what's your story to remember you. You can't just say, oh, it's Caroline. She lives in Powdersville. Well, maybe I'd remember that because I dated a guy from there, and it's such a
Oh.
I also thought it was interesting how she was talking about like how people view what they do. Like, we like could meet someone and like all they hear is that we're an attorney, but like if you talk about like, oh, I like my job is to help people, maybe if it's like say low income clients or something like that, and you actually like wove that into what you were saying, people would be more likely to remember that. And like she was saying, like real estate, these transactional people, they view their job as to like help people like realize the dream of owning a home. And whenever you say it like that versus I'm in real estate, it's way more impactful simply because like there's a purpose behind it. It like serves a bigger cause than you know?
That part kind of made me think about that, like practicing your like elevator speech of like,
Mm-hmm.
but tailoring it to yourself and not just like I sell houses, like, making it personal.
Yeah. It's like my full-time job. I negotiate contracts for clinical drug trials. And when I say it like that, some people are just like, oh, okay. But then if I ever talk to somebody who's, like I talked to a woman once whose son had participated in a bunch of trials because he had like juvenile arthritis or something just really random. And for her, that held a meaning. And if I like phrase it in a way of, I help new drugs get approved by the FDA that could help things like cancer or, like if I phrase it that way, people will be like, that's really incredible. What if I just say I negotiate contracts for clinical drug trials? People are like, huh, like that doesn't mean anything. The same with being like a Beachbody coach. If you talk to somebody and you're like, I'm a health and wellness coach. They're like, oh, you must really like to work out. It's probably what they think, you know? Whereas if you say, like, you help people, like, who otherwise couldn't work out from home and teach them how to eat, they'd be like, oh, that seems pretty valuable, you know?
That was him.
I got, like, this fat lab over here just snoring loud as can be. I was making stories earlier and I was putting like hashtags on them and I heard her snoring in the background. I'm like, this is insane. I think her like sleep apnea is increasing so much or something.
Hey, at least that was just a bark.
Instead of that sexual noise he was making before.
He's about to get something. His barking's getting on my nerves. He just barked at my husband. I mean, you just, whatever.
You need to get one of those remotes.
Mm-hmm.
Those app things.
I need one for everybody in here. The people, everybody.
Yeah.
That was mean. I don't know. I haven't read past, because I'm so old school, I was going to do like what y'all did. Like, I've never done the online Kindle or whatever. So I actually got this book from Amazon yesterday that I've read through today, through chapter 1. And I mean, I like what I have read so far. It's eye-opening, I think. I haven't read past chapter 1. Like, I'm sure you have, Sarah. You've probably read the whole thing, haven't you?
No, I started to like kind of go through it to like, you know, just have it read in advance, and then I've only read like 4 chapters.
Because it had a ton of great reviews on it and stuff, but I like how she does the examples and stuff too. I mean, it pretty much like what y'all always tell us. Like, I mean, how many times have you said, tell your story, because your story, I don't know, you know, like a lot of us don't want to, or sometimes we feel like, oh, I mean, you know, I keep telling my story, but I mean, it does, like, I don't know, people need to hear stuff like that, like that you're real, and I don't know. It made me think about a lot of things.
I guess we just think our lives are so like mundane or something that we don't feel like there's a lot to share, when in reality there's probably a lot more than most people. Like, I can't tell you the amount of people I talk to, like, I just get no time for me in a day, or I don't have any time to improve myself, or I don't have any of this. And like, to me, that just is probably kind of BS. Like, anybody can find it. So maybe you kind of have to be the person that continues to hammer it home in your own way. Like, don't yell at people. I think I've told Stacey before, I'm like, sometimes it sounds like you're preaching a little bit, and people don't want to hear you preaching. They want to hear like, I struggled with this, and here's how I got out of it. And it's such a fine line, you know, like, you don't want to attract everybody that's struggling, but like, you want to be able to show like, okay, this is not just all superficial stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes I think about like how much time I just spend like either watching something on my computer or like scrolling through social media and just mindless. And then I look like with headphones on, like while David's watching football or baseball or whatever the fuck sports on at the time. And I'm like, that was an hour and a half that I could have actually been doing something productive with.
Yeah.
Or do it far more than I actually say, hey, don't do this. But,
Right.
you know, I mean, I think that's so true. It's like, you know, when people are like, oh, I don't have time. And I say that to myself too. And I'm like, I have way less going on than a lot of other people. So I know I have time. It's just making that a priority, because you have to want it enough, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And like me, I have a tendency, I don't really scroll social media a ton for pleasure per se, but like when I do, I go straight to stories and I go straight to these fashion bloggers and I start swiping up on shit and I start buying things I don't need. And I'm like, I swear to God, I do 90% of my shopping via those story swipe up things. I'm like, if I took that time and put it into like maybe working on my business or working on myself a little bit more and spending less money, like I could be a lot further along towards my goals right now. I was thinking for the last 90 days thing that like for the month of November, I should give up online shopping for myself. Like, okay, I'm allowed to buy some Christmas presents, but that's about it, you know, because it's gotten to be where it's like this is my new guilty pleasure. Like I'd rather scroll stories than watch TV half the time, you know?
Yeah.
But that just goes to show too, like that's how a lot of other people are spending their time. And if you're not using stories, then you're missing out. And I always suggest this to people too. Like most people don't actually listen to what your stories say. So like if you're making stories and you think they're good, put some little synopsis at the bottom that tells them exactly what you're saying. So even if they're not listening, they're getting it, you know?
Yeah.
Or there's people like me who like I'll watch your stories, but I'm at work and it's on mute. So I'm like guessing what's going on.
Yeah. So if you don't put a little, you know, summary for people, I mean, we're lazy consumers, you know what I mean? Like we don't take the time to read or listen, but if you put up a good picture out there, or if your like outfit looks good, then we might be drawn into the rest of it. Or, you know, like if your kids look super cute or something like that.
Stop.
Well, that's all I have. I was thinking maybe next week we could do like chapters 2 and 3.
Okay.
I did just get an email, like, because we were Premier last year, we can submit a form to have a call with the bar blend lady. I think they would probably combine us with other teams, but I think that'll be kind of cool. Elise, maybe?
Ooh.
So I messaged Megan, because there were very specific dates on this, and asked if she wanted me to, like, submit one for, like, on behalf of Fit and Fierce also, because I don't want to, like, both request one. I think that'll be a good one. Y'all, the work I loved. I was like kind of not expecting a ton. He really doesn't cuss that much. Like it's just enough. It's just enough for me. You know,
I guess they probably. I guess some people may be offended. I think it's just a normal. It's probably no more than what we cuss at Autumn and all them. So.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, I didn't think it was like anything overly offensive. I've had this client for like 3 years now who was one of my very first leads, and he was just messaging me about it. And he's like, does the guy like cuss you out in it? Like he was intrigued by it. And I was like, no, it's not that far.
Oh.
It's just enough.
He's been like yelling in my ear.
I mean, to be honest, I appreciate the programs where they talk less. Like Jericho talked a little bit too much for me. Autumn and 80 Obsession drove me nuts with the whole cast just chatting the whole time. Or maybe it was the real time 21 days. This is good. There's one guy, though, that's on there that's like kind of meathead, ex-football guy. And they have a little bit of banter going on. But, you know, you can always mute them. Colin really liked it, too, though, so that was good.
Yeah, I can't wait to do it.
I think Michael could do it. He just wouldn't have to modify some of the stuff.
Oh, they are coming out with a modifier, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder why they decided to do that. Just
when are they coming out with one?
I don't remember because it was posted at that leadership retreat last weekend. I think what they decided to do was like rush putting it out there. That's the impression I get, because since it's not available until April. And then they wanted to like have a really hard program. I mean, I guess if you think about it, they kind of need to do male, female, male, female, male, female to like keep, you know, people engaged. And they probably needed something in between Bar Blend and Morning Meltdown to like bring back in some of the Shaun T people or whatever. But I think it's supposed to be early next year.
January 3rd.
Okay, yeah.
Perfect in time for our schedule, my schedule.
The prep. 4 weeks of the prep. Almost sounds like an STD.
So it's going to be a separate program then to like ease people up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the Peppermint Mocha Shakeology comes out on Friday.
Saturday.
Oh,
Saturday the 1st?
Friday.
It's the 1st, right?
Yeah.
No, Fridays.
What's Friday?
The
1st.
And they're actually packaging like some bundles with a box of pumpkin spice and a box of peppermint mocha.
Yeah.
I just saw it posted. I'll post it in the team page.
So will that count as our 90 PV then?
It
Or it
counts as,
doesn't?
it counts as 90 PV, but it doesn't count towards like the 365er.
Oh, why do they do that to me?
Because that's the like auto ship is the whole 365er thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Run that through your husband's account if you're gonna get it.
I know, but we have so much Shakeology. Like, because the last one I ran through, I did a variety for me.
I just
But
switch to
when-
packets. Whenever I get too much, I switch to packets and I start making more like brownies with them and protein balls and more snack stuff.
I need to do that.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
I
Or
did
you
too. I
could-
think it
you could
also
run
doesn't
a-
expire. No.
Like you could run a 5-day Shakeology group if you wanted to get a box of
Yeah.
both, and if you just get
I thought about that too.
like 3 to 5 people, you could do like one packet of each, and then add in like vanilla chocolate latte or something. Maybe we should do that.
Yeah.
I was already asked though if we would do like a 3-day refresh maybe after Halloween, and that
Because we did last year. Because I thought about that too. I had it pop up.
Yeah. It's a little late for it, but I mean, you can always, I think a 3-day refresh is something you can post up last minute about and just see if people are interested,
Yeah.
I think that's it.
So chapters 2 and 3 for next week.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's like part of that same unit, so I feel like that might be
Yeah.
an easy thing to do.
Once upon a brain.
All right, I'm going to take a picture because I always forget. Ready? Ashley, you're so dark.
No.
I don't have lights on in here.
You're just being really creepy right now.
I am. I don't know. Someone's messaging me right now, so I got distracted, and then I didn't read the first chapter of the book, so I didn't have anything to say.
Don't tell us that. No, I'm just kidding.
I read like the first few paragraphs.
The other thing I forgot to mention is this coach, Lisa, I don't really know how to say her name, like the Bedeau or something, went live on our team page today. If you guys could go watch it to give her some support, because she went live to share about like her organization system, and she really just does it really simple, and she uses the Success Club tracker, but she's like put it together in a little booklet in a way that makes sense. And Carrie was saying at our leadership retreat that while Lisa's not like, she's not like a, superstar diamond coach, she brings in the most volume, which means like highest income, for the most part. And she has like the simplest system of any of the coaches that Carrie has that are super active. So she went live today. And then my friend Jessica Turner's I'm gonna get her to go live. This is like in lieu of team calls, just try to add value like in the team page. And my friend Jessica Turner is somebody who probably gets like 80% of her business via Facebook community groups. And so she's going to go live and talk about how she uses Facebook community groups to connect with people, since Instagram's not really her thing. And, her posts are just hard to get a lot of traction on now. So she uses a lot of community groups for like her location. And then she's a veterinarian. But I think she's going to ask her to give some like ideas of, places to look and how to engage with people in those groups without coming across as salesy, and how to convert them to maybe people in like a free group with her or a paid challenge group. And she was out of town last weekend, but I think I'm going to get her to do that like in the coming days. And then the last thing is Super Saturday. If you guys can go, I know the one in Charleston is Saturday. Carolyn, I don't know where there might be one in Greenville. Obviously
There's one in Charlotte.
Okay. There's probably a big one in Atlanta. And then Ashley, I think you already looked for yours, right?
Yeah, it's like an hour and a half away. I don't know.
Yeah. Which I've been there. It's hard, but the nice thing about going is you can always write off the mileage if you go. just something to keep in mind for
Yeah.
later.
It's actually close to it. Like, I have to go. We're doing a dinner for my grandma's birthday that day. I don't know what time we're doing that, but it's actually closer in towards where they live. So really, if it was all before I had to go to my grandma's, then I could maybe